Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam sorry Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayat. I'm going to read the English. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta pareshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. In loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. I'm just going to read a couple of the English glorification of Bhagavatam, from the Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam is a literary incarnation of God, and it is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. This Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, and so on. Persons who have lost vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Continuing our reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th Canto, 16th chapter. I'm going to read the first verse, and then we're going to chant this verse. So I'll chant the Sanskrit and read the previous verse. Putram kritva shunashepam Devaratam Chabhargavam Agigartam Sutan Aha Jeshta Esha Prakalpyate Yakalpatam. Translation: Vishwamitra accepted the son of Ajigarta, known as Shunasepa, who was born in the Bhrigu dynasty and was also known as Devarata, as one of his own sons. Vishwamitra ordered his other sons to accept Sunashepa as their elder brother. In today's verse, 31. So Yo Vai Harishchandra Makhe. So Vai Harishchandra Makhe. So Vai Harishchandra Makhe. Vikrita Purusha Pashu. Vikrita Purusha Pashu. Vikrita Purusha Pashu. Sutva Devan Prajeshadin. Studva Devan Prajeshadin. Studva Devan Prajeshadin. Mumuche Pasha Bandavat Mumuche Pashabandhanat. Ya, he who Shunashepa, Vai, indeed, Harishchandra Make, in the sacrifice performed by King Harishchandra, Vikrita, was sold, Purusha, man, Pashu, sacrificial animal, Studva, offering prayers, Devan, to the demigods, Praja Isha Adin, headed by Lord Brahma, Mumuche, was released, Pasha Bandhanat, from being bound with ropes like an animal. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. We think some of our names are hard. Shunashepa's father sold Shunashepa to be sacrificed as a man animal in the yajna of King Harishchandra. When Shunashepa was brought into the sacrificial arena, he prayed to the demigods for release and was released by their mercy. Purport. Here is a description of Shunashepa. When Harishchandra was to sacrifice his son Rohita arranged to save his own life by purchasing Shunashepa from Shunashepa's father to be sacrificed in the yajna. Shunashepa was sold to Maharaj Harishchandra because he was the middle son, between the oldest and the youngest. It appears that sacrifice of a man as an animal in yajna has been practiced for a very long time. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gananjana Sharakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual masters have opened my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. Mukam karoti vachalam pangam magayate ganim yat kripa tamaham bande shigurum dinataranam. Offer my respectful obeisance unto my spiritual master, deliverer of fallen souls. His mercy turns the dumb into eloquent speakers and enables the lame to cross mountains. So many verses. I definitely appreciate learning verses and prayers of the great devotees. So I don't want to take too much time with prayers, but the whole morning's been prayers for me. And there's two prayers or three, that I like to say. They're the first two verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And there's something to be said for chanting the standard Mangala Charanam prayers. There's something to be said for picking prayers that resonate with us, so we'll think about the meaning. I think sometimes in attending an all-morning program, we kind of mumble our respects to our guru. So I like to mix it up a little bit. Sometimes I do the English, sometimes I do different prayers, just so I can be conscious of what I'm saying. Some time ago, Ramapad Maharaj gave a class and talked about rituals, how it can be very ritualistic, very formulaic, but to really put our heart into what we're saying and understand the significance and the meaning. So anyway, these are the first two prayers. I like to say them every day. Mantra Guru Ariyata Shiksha Guru Gana Tanhara Charana Age Karye Vandana. I first offer my respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of my initiating. I don't even know what when I chanted, talking about being unconscious. Anyway, this is a prayer that I chant every day. I first offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of my initiating spiritual master and all my instructing spiritual masters. So the one I wanted, I don't know if I chanted it because I'm a little bit, still a little better than last time. Because it's a big responsibility to speak to you and represent their tradition, actually. Bande Gurun Isha Bhaktan Ishanishvatarakam Tat Prakasham Satachtakti Krishna Chaitanya Samgikam. This pretty much covers it. It says, I offer my respectful obeisances to the spiritual masters, the devotees of the Lord's incarnation, his primary portions, and his energies, and the primal Lord himself, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Bande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Guru Dae Pushpavantao Chitra Sammanimoonadao. It's glorifying our Lords, Gaur-Nitai, who are like the sun and the moon. And they have come to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and wonderfully bestow love of Godhead upon us all. So another difficult section, perhaps, of the Bhagavatam. The last and first talk I gave, a son was being, and his brothers were being sacrificed. We're told to Parsuram that he had to kill him. So we had to look at that and explain it. And in this verse, we're in many parts of the Bhagavatam, we're giving a lens into another world, another time period, with different values and different acceptable norms. So, not applicable now, and they may go against our Western sensitivities, because Prabhupada talks about in another purport that, sacrificing a man as an animal in a sacrifice, or what was the other one? Or having slaves was a common practice in ancient cultures. And that goes against our sensitivities today. But we have to understand the time period and the values in that people have different motivations. And in the Bhagavatam, we get all varieties of people and different motivations. So some are purely motivated. Some represent the pure devotees like Parsuram. Some represent mixed devotees, or sages, or jnanis, or yogis. And the perfection they obtain doesn't appeal to us very much. When you think about what we signed up for, pure devotional service, and the following in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan, it's very much different than Karmakanda. Although Karmakanda is not, there's not usually these kind of sacrifices, but as usual, there's a big backstory to this. And when I read the verse, I was like, uh-oh. How am I going to explain this? But fortunately, in the same canto, in the 7th chapter, we get the backstory here. That Harishchandra, he had no sons, but he was advised by Varuna to perform a yajna on the condition that he would get his son. He could have a son, but his son would be part of a yajna for Varuna. So it's doesn't seem like a very good arrangement, but I guess it's not quite like that, but in the sections of the Vedas that recommend you can sacrifice a goat on a dark moon night, and then you have to whisper in the goat's ear, and in your next life you can eat me. Doesn't sound like a very intelligent proposition. And as always, we may make that kind of an evaluation, which is true, and then we can ask ourselves, how do we do that in small ways? How are we motivated for temporary material gain at the cost of our spiritual lives? To some extent, it may not seem so radical, but the small decisions we make ultimately create our life and the person that we become. So every moment, we're all confronted with choices in how we want to act, how we want to think. Can't always control how we feel, but at least ideally, if we're practiced, we can step back and observe ourselves acting and thinking and interacting with other people and being and watching our mind be critical, or our ego want to take credit, or whatever. So, but in any case, back to the story. So he performed this yajna, and then Varuna was saying, "Hey, you know, remember me? I gave you a son, but the condition was you'd have to sacrifice him for my yajna." So he stalled out of affection for his son, and then Harishchandra got a disease, and his son Rohit kind of went into the forest, took a bow and arrow. He was going to defend himself, he thought. And then he understood, Rohit, the son of Harishchandra, understood that his father was had an illness, and it was because of he wasn't sacrificed. So he thought that, well, I mean, I don't understand it, but it was acceptable at that time. So he made arrangements to purchase this person who was actually very advanced in spiritual knowledge to be sacrificed. And so he gave him to his father, and they did the yajna, and the devas were satisfied, and Varuna was satisfied, but because Shunashepa was a great soul, the demigods blessed him and he didn't have to die. So I guess you could say it's a happily ever after, but we don't know all the ramifications. But the great souls are protected. Who knows another instance in the Bhagavatam that someone was to be sacrificed as a man animal? Very good. That had a happy ending, you could say. So that's what we, ideally, only in devotional service is there really a happy ending. Whatever happens, whatever circumstances we have to face as a sadhaka. And a lot of points I make over and over again because I'm living them every day. And the idea of having to surrender every day and trying to understand what it actually means. We use a lot of words. Usually we hear surrender like, surrender, Prabhu. But it's really an internal state of dependence on the Lord. That, and the humility of great devotees sometimes is quite disconcerting. The humility of Bhakti-Vinod in his prayers, or Krishnadas Kaviraj says, anyone who chants my name becomes impious. I'm lower than a stool worm. So for us, although when we were brahmacharis, we used to have a humility competition. Who could be, I'm lower than a stool worm, I'm lower than a stool worm, whatever, kind of artificially. So there is appropriate humility for our state of consciousness, where we are spiritually. And for most people who are struggling through anartha nivritti, through the working through the unwanted ways of thinking and acting, we have to understand where we're situated and have a high level of self-esteem. Sometimes we may look at or someone else, or maybe a beginning devotee, maybe even us, even maybe an older devotee, it sounds, wow, they have a real low self-esteem, but it's not like that. It's a whole another level of advancement, where sometimes we feel so disqualified, so insignificant. It can be depressing sometimes. But the great souls, in relationship to their realization of Krishna, feel very tiny and insignificant. And in that insignificance, they feel the great grace upon them of the holy name and bhakti, and they feel enlivened to serve. So if we're depressed by our fallen condition, that's a more or less imitation. So I've been there before. But spiritual advancement is a very gradual process, a lifetime process. To really be able to evaluate where we are in the spiritual map, where we need to go, what is required to get there, and to really embrace it. And although it seems daunting, pure, unmotivated devotional service, free from any desire for personal benefit, it's possible, and we have to have that conviction that it's worth it. It's enlivening to me to think that I can become something more than I am. I mean, who here became a devotee because they wanted to stay the same? You wanted to just be the same as you always were? No. But we can, at a certain point, we can get comfortable. Either we're comfortable in our position, or we just think it's just too much. I can't do any more than I'm doing. And we may not try anymore. We may not believe it's possible for us to make more advancement than, I mean, you can't force it. But at least you can determine, do you want it? And how much? And what are you willing to do for it? And I know that everyone here, we're all on different levels of spiritual advancement. And some people are just struggling to do the basics, just to chant, get the rounds out of the way. And that's okay. Whatever way we come to Krishna is a good way. But at a certain point, we need to know the levels and stages, and that is a very high thing, to receive the grace of bhakti, the grace of the internal energy of the Lord. Everyone has a little bit of radha in them after initiation, a little bit of that grace. So it's a grace-filled process. And our sadhana is really to attract grace. It isn't just that we're waiting for the honorary degree, but we have something to do, and that's to try our level best to serve, to pray, to make advancement, to be a devotee, and to really understand our good fortune, and every day to be thankful for the opportunity to serve. Of course, it's easy to say, but everyone has to have their own convictions and their inspiration, and that will be tested. And it must be tested. That's my realization in dealing with cancer for the last 4 years, that everything is a gift. Every day is a gift. And in the first 4 or 5 months I was in Vrindavan, year before last, I had this general sense of love just from being in the Dham. And I saw that with that sense of loving feeling, it's just kind of a generalized, it wasn't like I love Krishna or anything, but it was, I don't know how to explain it exactly, but it was just a feeling of love. And in that state, I just felt so grateful. And I missed being in Vrindavan, even though I was in Vrindavan. And then that was tested by the pain I had to go through and endure, and by the social isolation that really brought me to my knees. And it was so hard for me. It's still hard for me. I have to pray that my voice is going to hold up in this class. So we can't take anything for granted. I mean, we do, but everything can be withdrawn at any moment. Whatever abilities we have, our ability to sit, our ability to speak. We have this devotee here from North Carolina who's gradually losing all of his motor functions. And I know other devotees who have endured that. Their mind is still sharp, but their body is not very usable. So we all experience that to some extent. And when you get older, you watch it deteriorate. And it is very humbling and very sober. And, speaking, I had what do you call it? Kind of like a daydream that someone wrote me, "Who do you think you are giving class?" Said, "You have a lot of nerve." And I thought, you have to have some nerve to give class. It's true. Not that you think you're anything special, but it's an opportunity to become purified, to be able to be to say something to a devotee that may encourage them to stay the course their whole life, to go a little bit higher, to stretch a little more. So, in the presence of Prabhupada, we felt, I'm nothing. But we also felt that by His grace we can do anything. We can be empowered to do beyond our capacity. And a lot of us, when we look back, we did things, we don't know if we could do them now, but by His empowerment, we did many incredible things that were beyond our comfort zone. I was going to get a whiteboard, and I may still do it, and I was going to put on it, I didn't come up with it, but it says your comfort zone in one circle, in another circle it says where the magic happens. So we can all be challenged to understand if we're just hiding in our comfort zone. That means we can do it easily, it's not too much of an endeavor. And then we get a service. It's like for me speaking, I'm actually introverted. And years ago I was happy to know that a great motivational speaker, which I'm not, but said he was an introvert. But sometimes, it's like my wife did book distribution and collections for like 12 years, and that was out of her comfort zone. And she had to pray every day to Prabhupada that she'd be able to do it, and she was crying every day, I can't do it, I can't do it. But she did it, and she got a lot of mercy from it. So she couldn't do it now. Now she has a different service, ministering to the devotees. I think it's a good term, borrowed from the Christians, that we need devotees who minister to the devotees, that hear their story, that hear their doubts, that hear their suffering, that hear their mental disturbances, and are equipped. I mean, ultimately, yeah, sadhana, pure chanting, pure association, that's the real healing. But often we need some trained people to normalize our suffering, what we're going through. I'm not a therapist, but I work with my wife with couples, and sometimes we see that people will be beating around the bush for a while, and then finally in the 5th session they come out with their secret, and we go, everyone goes through that. They go, really? So sometimes devotees are not very confidential. So it's very important, one of the loving exchanges, revealing your heart in confidence, that we're confidential, and that we also have to be careful who we reveal our heart to. Not everyone is going to be confidential. Not everyone is going to understand the level of struggle that we're going through, the level of mental imbalance we may have. And I say this not as any disrespect to who becomes a devotee, but when my wife was going to graduate school for the 2nd time, she became a devotee when she was in her final semester of graduate school, dropped out, lived in the temple for 12 years, and went back to school, got her degree. And in those days, people would say, why do you want to be a counselor? Just chant Hare Krishna. Yeah, if you can do it purely, sure. Anyway, the fact that she's, she's behind me, she says she's in a different generation than me. She's 3.5 years younger than me. She can't retire, there's just too big of a need for devotees who are sadhakas and counselors, who deal with the relative issues, the imbalances, the baggage that we bring to Krishna consciousness that impacts our relationships with each other, may cause us to make offenses to each other because of our habitual, it's really an artha nivritti from our perspective. Some reaction to growing up or past karma or whatever. So doing the introspection to understand that. And I've been blessed, especially the last, now it's almost 15 months, looking at my issues, my anarthas, and who I become and who I aspire to be. And so class to me is like sharing your heart. Who you are as a person, what you've understood, then it has power. If I can speak from my realization and my experience to you, it has power. Rather than, we should know verses and we should describe them, and I forgot a verse I was going to quote, to understand this Leela. That we're grateful that we have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dispensation of pure love for Krishna in a very relatively easy method. Anyone can do it. Even a dog can chant. Of course, we have to be challenged. And we have to recommit to Krishna consciousness on a regular basis. Just like you have to recommit in a marriage. Because people change. And you have to change. And even materially, you have to change if you're going to be successful in anything. So, it's important to keep those things in mind when understanding the Bhagavatam and understanding our lens and our filter by which we're trying to understand this and trying to understand this culture. And that we're more Krishnic, you could say, than Vedic. We're Vedic, but not Vedic like at this time. Loosely speaking, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his favorite scripture was the Bhagavatam. And if we compare it to Christianity, the Bhagavatam is like the New Testament, the testament of love versus rules. We have a lot of rules too. But the real rule is to love Krishna, to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. And we can see the prohibitions as a facility to help us chant Hare Krishna. If we really understand the benediction of the holy name, if we really understand that it's Krishna coming to us, that the holy name is chanting us, devotional service is doing us. We're trying to be, in the ultimate sense, a vessel of love for Krishna, like Radharani is a supreme container of love for Krishna. So in our own small way, we are going to be a certain container of love which Krishna can taste. He's Rasaraj. He's a taster of rasa. So that's a very high conception. But at least we should know about it, that that's our goal, is to love Krishna, and then you know what to do when you love Krishna. So, yeah, it was very interesting thinking of this whole thing of a man-animal and buying somebody, and but that was the time they lived in. But even though we can see they're great souls, and Harish Chandra got a transcendental knowledge, it sounds his leaving his body was more like a yogi's leaving his body. Didn't say what his destination was. So we have to look at that. We want to be respectful of these persons. It's not like the gopis, if they see Narada, goes, "Oh, you're just a rag bhakta, we don't care for you." They're very respectful to everyone who is a devotee. So that's part of our challenge, to keep that respect and kindness to each other and to people in general. So, sacrifice. He's doing a sacrifice because he wanted the son, and he had to pay for it with a son, his life. So we have a much easier sacrifice, and that's the sacrifice of giving our heart and our life and our love. Relatively speaking, it's easier. But to complete in something I think about every day, how can I really give myself completely? How can I really surrender my agenda? So I pray to live a little longer so that I can make some more advancement, and then I say, if you so desire. So that's always a safe prayer, to pray, to be honest enough to acknowledge where you're at and not just hide behind the veneer of being a devotee. It's very easy to do. And again, it depends where we're at in our life. I've been like forced to surrender. But it's still voluntary. I still have to choose it every day. Even though it's forced, it's in my face every day that I could die today. It's a very great mercy for me. It puts everything in perspective. My life. And one of the points I wanted to make that I'm getting to in a roundabout way is we think, why all this list of kings and who cares really, you know? But actually, the point of that, in one sense, is like Prabhupada's prayer, Vrindavan bhajans. I don't like to read stuff, but I just wanted to read a little bit of it to give you the mood of a list of names. In other words, whatever we do at some point, no one's going to know anything about our life. Nothing. In 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, we think it's all so very important. It's very insignificant. So we have to harmonize what appear to be contradictory positions. I'm nothing, but I have value. Why? Because I'm part of Krishna. I'm lovable. Why? Because I'm part of the Supreme Lovable. There's a quote, I don't know if I quoted it last time, but I really like it. It's supposed to be from Martin Luther King, great civil rights leader in America. He said, I love everyone, but I don't like everyone. So in other words, as souls, we're all lovable, we're great, we're part of Krishna. It's the conditioning that's the problem. For all of us. What do every one of us struggle with the most? Our conditioning, our way that we look at life. We struggle with that. We suffer because of that. And we argue to defend it. That's the ironic thing. We get on these kind of discussions where we're impassioned about something. And I read it and I think, well, both sides have some merit. So we have to be a little sober about our conditioned nature. People want to understand their past life. Fair enough. I like to say to them, look in the mirror. This is the result of our past life. Look at your body, your family, your past growing up. That's your karma manifest. So what are you going to do about it? And I see devotees, they keep their wounds alive. This happened to me 40 years ago. I'm not saying it's not a big deal. It's unfortunate. But if you read the lives of people who have overcome great adversities, it's very impressive. It's not about what happens to us, but what we do with that. It's like I grew up in an alcoholic family. And for so long, even as a devotee, I was this poor child of an alcoholic. That wasn't getting me very far, spiritually. And I had to overcome that. And I had to forgive my past, my parents, myself. And I'm so much lighter now because I did that work. Self-acceptance. I'm more than my past. And, devotees come from a diverse background. You may be born in Vrindavan in a very glorious background. That's wonderful. A lot of it's come in a lot of material distress because that gets our attention. The 4 reasons people become a devotee, it's usually mixed with a lot of distress. Getting beat up by the world. And then that mixes with our past lives, Sukriti, Bhakti, Sukriti, and gets us on the path. And then like Prabhupada says in the Gita 9:3, when people become well situated, then sometimes they leave because now they're not feeling distress. But fortunately, for some of us, we may get cancer, like me, because I was a casual devotee. But I had some good qualities. I was praying, please, Lord, let me advance spiritually. Please let me advance. I didn't pray for years for advancement. And so I saw that, okay, Krishna has a lot of things at his disposal. the 2x4 effect, or the stick to the head, is very effective. So Krishna got my attention, and I realized that my level of Krishna consciousness was not sufficient to really make much advancement, because I was comfortable. And being comfortable is not the fast track to spiritual progress when we really read it and study it. So I've said that to devotees before, and they were crying. And I understood that I was being a little bit severe, perhaps. So how to be encouraging, but real, honest? What is it really required for our advancement? But I was going to read on this theme of a list of names. I'm just going to read a couple verses of it. If you haven't read it, Prabhupada's poem, there's a book of his poems that you can get. This is when he was in Vrindavan before he came to America. And I'm into family and marriage and all that, so I'm not against it. I think it's, for most people, it's an important ashram. To make it an ashram. Just thought I'd say that, because he just we understand Prabhupada's whole thing, what he went through to take up the renounced order, and how his family seemed to be an impediment. Sometimes our spouse can be the greatest inspiration for us. It's possible. I'm sitting alone in Vrindavan Dham. In this mood, I am getting many realizations. I have my wife, sons, daughters, grandsons, everything, but I have no money, so they are a fruitless glory. Krishna has shown me the naked form of material nature. By his strength, it has become tasteless to me today. And then he quotes the verse, Yasyaham anugrinami harisheta danam shanai. I gradually take away all the wealth of those upon whom I am merciful. How was I able to understand this mercy of the All-Merciful? And I read this last, it's quite long to read this verse. Everyone has abandoned me, seeing me as penniless. Wife, relatives, friends, brothers, everyone. This is misery, but it gives me a laugh. I sit alone and laugh. In this Maya samsara, whom do I really love? Where have all my loving father and mothers gone to now? Where are my elders? Who are my own folk? Who will give me news of them? Tell me who. All that is left of this family is a list of names. So that's very sobering. Doesn't mean that we don't have affection and love for our family, but in perspective of this wisdom. It's a process, it's gradual. And I've seen some devotees enter marriage thinking, well, I shouldn't get attached because I'm just going to take sannyas, and had a miserable marriage. We have that need for loving exchanges in a marriage, in a family. Not everyone needs it, but we all need loving relationships, whether it's with other monks or sannyasis or whatever. We need that. It's a human need. So you need it in a marriage, in a family. But at the same time that you have that, you have to make so many sacrifices for the family, and that's a good thing. Sacrifice, love is born from sacrifice. So we sacrifice for the family, but it's not materialistic family. The wife and the husband, if they're devotees, you're serving a devotee. It's not materialistic. It's mixed, of course. Most of us have mixed motives, if we're honest, but at least we can aspire for the high motives. So time, it's one of the themes. It's an easy theme to talk about. The imperceptible diminishing of time for everything. So this list of names of this one gave birth to this one, and this one did this, and this one did that. And now are a list of names in a scripture. And they're gone, who knows how many births they've had. I don't have time now. I had a couple other stories to share with you. But I'll share an easy, there's one where, I'll just quickly say it. Revati's father brought her to Brahma in Brahmaloka. Must have been pretty advanced to be able to do that. And he had some people. He had a person in mind for his daughter, and so this is also in the 9th canto, 3rd chapter. And so they were having a dramatic performance. So he couldn't talk to Brahma, so he waited till it was over, And then after it was over, he paid his obeisances, and he said to Brahma, "This is what I hoped for." And Brahma laughed out loud. He said, 27 Chaturvyuhas have passed since you've been waiting here. There's not even any memory of these people. So, but she was meant to be married to Lord Balaram. But that's a story that's like, wow, what is my significance? It's significant to Krishna. That's the main thing. Our service. And the other story, I don't know where it is, he was in a BTG, I think. There was once a sage, and the sage lived under the stars. And he had a benediction that for every hair in his body, he would live a day of Brahma. And he was a very hairy sage. And at some point, his disciples said, "Guru Maharaj, we should at least build you a hut." And he said, "Why? Everything is temporary." So what a vision. You can imagine how long he would live, but he had a realization of the temporal nature of the material world. So, man, there's so many points in this what is a Shaktivich avatar. It's always good when you prepare, you have this much and you maybe give that much. And I know I jump around a lot. But to understand these relationships and the customs of the time requires some thought, some study, and also gratitude for what we have in bhakti, for the holy name. It's an austerity to sit and listen to someone. It's easier to give the talk for me, because I get to be engaged the whole time. I like, actually, my wife also, to ask people a lot of questions, make sure they're with you. So I hope that if you can condense it all into one or two things, that one of them may stick to you for today, one or 2 points. And whatever you feel from me, in my experience here in Vrindavan and facing death, and that you can, to your best ability, have that attitude that I could die today. And if that was to be so, how would I live? A lot of people talk about that, secular world also. There's many books about it. But it is really a good practice. Maybe harder when you're young, easier when you're 70, almost like me. So we're out of time. So in that jumping around presentation, maybe there's a question. We can entertain one. He's the man of questions. Very good, by the way. There's a saying, I didn't come up with it. Questions are the answer. That means we become what we think about. We can understand a lot about ourselves by the types of questions we ask. The scripture is all questions and answers.
You're expressing the urgency of taking Krishna consciousness in a very serious way due to the time factor and life is so short. When you're healthy and you're in a good state of mind, you would think of enthusiastically engaging in devotional service. But when you're down, being beaten by cancer and other diseases and other things that, may disturb our mind, then how do we muster up that same determination and drive to be enthusiastic about Krishna when we feel so rotten?
Oh, you mean when you're sick? Well, my experience anyway, in my most tested, painful times when I didn't know how to get through the day, and I was confronted with the choice. I could say, I could curse. I did, I have to admit. Said a lot of bad words. It was like, I can't handle it. Krishna! I got over it. But I wasn't afraid to express it. Because Krishna's our dearmost friend. He knows, I don't really mean it, Lord. I'm mad, I don't want to feel this pain. It's not any fun. But my wife has been a good teacher for me. We've been married 30 years, and she has struggled a lot with her health, that weak constitution. And she's the most cheerful person I know, positive person. So we relate a lot now on the Sick Body program, and how in spite of that, you have the choice. You can still feel, and this was on the Prabhupada Disciples Conference, and I didn't find the quote, but Prabhupada said, I think in a letter, he didn't feel well the whole time he was preaching in the West. So think about that, the whole time. So, it's a choice we make, really. I mean, there's books written, happiness is a choice, love is a choice, but it's really tested when you're knocked on your tail and you're in pain. It's hard to think of Krishna, but you still have to remember the taste that you have, and that you can be angry and resentful, and you can why me all day long, but you can also say, why not you? You know, people suffer, great souls suffer, or are in pain. The Buddhists say pain is inevitable, suffering is a choice, or is optional. So there's some truth in that. And you really, the only recourse is to try to take shelter of Krishna, and to call out, and to understand what it means to surrender, actually. I'm in this situation, Lord. I would prefer to not be in this situation. However, if you feel it is for my highest good, please give me the strength to accept it and to keep my positivity and my aspirations for spiritual life. That's the test to me, when you're just don't know how you're going to do it. You rely on your faith, or you find someone who has faced that before, and you ask them, how did you do it? Or we all need inspirational people in our lives, people that are at least some steps ahead of us, inspirationally speaking, and that we can imbibe from them their mood of dependence on the Lord, their level of surrender in the face of great life reverses, which we're all going to experience. Generally, we don't pray for them. And Kunti, she was not a masochist. She didn't want to suffer, but she was willing to suffer if Krishna was in their life. And I've known devotees who said, I'm going to be like Kunti, I'm going to pray for suffering. And Krishna said, okay. And they go, oh, I don't want that. We don't need to pray for suffering. It's going to be there. We're going to be challenged by something in our life. And like the Bhagavatam, Tatenu Kampam, that verse of Brahma, you accept the suffering upon you, the misery. My karma is being minimized. It's actually grace upon me. That Krishna loves me. He's not being indifferent. He's giving me an impetus to choose the grace that's coming to me. So it's sometimes they say attitude is everything. Pretty much. And it's something that we have to choose, and we have to cultivate, and we have to read the lives of great devotees and think, today, we can all ask ourselves today, what is one thing I can do that's going to help me advance spiritually today? What can I apply today? What service can I do? What chanting can I do? What prayers can I offer that can bring me deeper into understanding what Krishna consciousness is, what it is for me, so that, someone asks me, well, how do you know you need to do the introspection? I think everyone needs to do it. The personal growth work, a lot of devotees, they don't believe in it, you just chant. That's okay if they want to, but it's, in my estimation, it's part of an artha nivritti. It's really helped me facing my demons, my darkness, my low sense of self. Otherwise, I can't talk to you. If I don't have any value, If I get up here and say, I'm nothing, you shouldn't listen to me, it's not going to be, on a certain level, yeah, I'm insignificant, but I need to do this for my healing. I need to speak my heart. So you have to determine what you need in this lifetime to get through it. So I would say those things. You feel terrible, but you realize the value of Krishna consciousness, and that really there's no problem out there. The only problem is here. Prahlad Maharaj says, the only enemies are the uncontrolled and disturbed mind. Uncontrolled? There's two things. The only enemy is a disturbed and uncontrolled mind. So that's a realization, of course. Something terrible happens to you, you got to deal with that on a human level. But at a certain point, it's the karma, it's the grace that's come upon you to see how you're going to react to that. So is it good or is it bad? I've understood that to some extent, and I'm challenged to do that. But some days are better than others. But at least we should know that, like I pray all the time, please help me. And then my thinking now is, please let me appreciate your help. The help is always there. The guidance is always there, but we don't always hear it. We don't always act upon it. There's just so many things to think about as a devotee and to pray about, and to not be just complacent. Easy to become complacent. Krishna consciousness is like outer space, basically. So we want to understand as much as the Lord blesses us to understand. And to cultivate that gratitude. And, Gandhi is who he is, but he said some good things. Be the change you want to see. It's a good statement. Prabhupada did that. He had quotes that he learned from people. And if it's true, it's true. It doesn't matter who said it. Some people may not be very popular to say it about, that you heard it from them. But again, how can we take this part of the Bhagavatam and use it to inspire us, to help us be grateful? Hare Krishna. It's an ocean. And you all have service to do. I tend to be long-winded. And then when I get to talk and address questions, then I get excited. So forgive me for that. Hare Krishna.